Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's workshop and our final one under the theme of systematic review. Our facilitator for today is Dr. Sanki Biswas. Firstly, I would like to introduce our facilitator. Dr. Sankey is a postdoctoral research fellow in the Department of Geology, University of Johannesburg. He is currently specializing in applied geology with an emphasis on organic petrology and geochemistry of coal and shale. He completed his PhD in geology from the Indian Institute of Technology in 2001, in 2021 actually, with a focus on source rock characteristics, hydrocarbon generation potential, and paleodepositional environment of Penium and Paleogene, organic rich coal shale deposit of India. He found these areas very interesting and inquisitive as coal and shale are the major sources of unconventional hydrocarbons resource play that will fill the future energy demand. In addition to this, they are also an alternative source for trace elements, rare earth elements, and critical raw elements material actually. He completed his master's degree in geology at the Department of Geology, Indian Institute of Technology. The subject is very interesting and important as it looks at the sum of the most essential issues in society today, including energy sources and sustainability, climate change, and the impact of development on the environment, mineral and natural hazards. Um, Dr. Sankey, we are ready when you are actually. Like, let's just welcome all our participants and please mute your mics. However, you are allowed to ask questions along the way by making use of a raise a hand or chat box, and then doctor will attend to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nikosi, for such a uh, long introductions. It's a brief introductions, I should say. So thank you for that. I think I am audible to everyone. Can you respond? Anyone? Am I audible?
Yes, you are, doctor.
Thank you. So shall I start?
Yes, you can start now.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Today I am going to talk about searching for the evidence, extracting data, and assessing the risks of bias under systematic review. First, what do we mean by systematic review? So, systematic review makes an attempt to compile all empirical data that satisfied pre-established eligibility requirement in order to provide an answer to a particular research questions. This indicates that when you're starting a systematic review, you should have a very well-established research questions and you need to establish your eligibility before we starting a systematic reviews. So its aim is to identify and synthesize all of the scholarly research on a particular topic, including both published or unpublished studies. So why do we perform systematic reviews? So systematic reviews are performed objectively and reproducibly to identify research gaps and to provide evidence for practice and policy makings. Therefore, before starting a systematic review, it is important to determine whether a body of a literature wants one or to clearly identify the reasons for conducting a systematic reviews. So most of all the researchers, we use literature reviews. So compared to literature reviews, systematic reviews are more time consuming and requires multiple persons research teams. So systematic reviews can also include a meta-analysis. So what do you mean by meta-analysis? It's a statistical combination of a results from two or more separate studies. It can be performed when there are multiple scientific studies addressing the same questions, with each individual studies reporting measurement that are expected to have some degree of error. So most of these introductions parts has already covered in the first lectures by Dr. Murray. So I was trying to just introduce and also recapitulate, so you can then I can follow. So coming to what are the key characteristics of a systematic review? It should have a well-defined research question, just I have said, with specific inclusion and exclusion criteria, thorough and systematic research of existing literatures, article screening process, at least two, data extraction and management, analysis and interpretations of results, and finally reports for publications. So in the introductions to systematic reviews sections, some of these key characteristics has been covered by Dr. Murray, and that inclusion and exclusion criteria has been covered by Dr. Moller. So today I will be highlight three important points. One is searching for evidence, extraction of data, and assessing the risks of bias. These three I will cover today. So coming to search for evidence, the goal of the systematic review search is to identify all relevant studies on a topic. Identify relevant studies means this is one of the primary objectives of a systematic review. This identifying relevant studies means that it helps to gather all available evidence on a systematic research courses on a topic. This indicates that your research strategy need to be comprehensive enough to capture a wide range of studies that might provide relevant informations. So what it involves? It involves multiple database, which include mostly published and unpublished literatures. Second one is balance between comprehensiveness and relevance. If you include too many relevant studies, that can affect the review process and dilute the focus of the review. Very much essential when you are doing systematic reviews. So it includes your keywords, control vocabularies to ensure that studies are closely aligned with your research questions. So your keywords should be very specific. That makes the balance between comprehensiveness and relevance. Coming to the third goals is documentation and reproducibility. Thus, your search strategies and its executions need to be well documented and transparent. These include database search, search terms, and strategic use. The inclusion-exclusion criteria applied to screen the studies, and any modifications made during the process. So these are three major goals of the systematic reviews for searching evidences. And finally, the search should be well documented and reproducible. What are the different sources? Different sources for like evidences, like scientific databases, scientific journals, organizations, websites, libraries, experts. So many of the researchers are from different different fields. So they have their own scientific journals, their databases, organizations. Different organizations have different research teams. So that can be a source for your evidence based on your research questions. The websites, libraries, every universities, they have very well libraries. From there you can you can search for your search for the evidences also, and your experts, your supervisors, you can discuss on it. So what are the different types of resources do we have for searching evidences? Like peer-reviewed journal articles, gray literatures, theses and dissertations, data statistics, circular and reports. I will explain one by one in the next slides. So coming first, the database and sources. There are many databases and sources we have. So like a ScienceDirect, this is the most familiar terms and most familiar platforms. We use it for searching evidences. So in the ScienceDirect, you can find different journals, articles, book chapters with respect to your research questions. You can use your keywords for searching evidences. So it has more than like 2,500 peer-reviewed journals, 11,000 books, and is the world's leading source for scientific, technical, and medical research repository. Scopus. Scopus has the largest abstracts and citation database of peer-reviewed literatures. So if someone in the field of biomedical or pharmaceuticals, you can go in Embase to search based on your research questions. Similarly, Medline or PubMed is also the researchers who is from the life science or biomedicals. They can go and search in the Medlines and PubMed. This will give you the database of references and abstracts of life science and biomedical topics. So turning research into practice is short name is TDIP. The aim is to offer healthcare professions a complete and updated list of online resources useful for evidence-based practice. So the people, researchers who are from these healthcare sectors, they use this platform for searching for evidences. And we have some more like Popline, which is population information online. It is also a health database. Wiley InterScience, is also a collection of online journals, books, research resources, which covers life, health, social, and physical sciences. CINAHL is a name as Cumulative Index to Nursing and Allied Health Literatures. It's a journal for nursings from like UK, US, and other countries. Web of Science. This contains remarkable treasures of data on scientific content. And Physico NFO is a database of abstracts of literatures in the field of physiology. So if there is something some I have missed, that you can consult your supervisors, or you can go in the library and ask for more database based on your research questions and topics. So coming to the second sources is grey literatures. Grey literatures plays a very crucial role in research and decision making by offering a diverse range of perspectives and insight that may not be present in peer-reviewed literatures. So grey literature mostly stand for manifold document types, produced in all levels of government, academic, businesses, and industries in mostly printed and electronic formats, which are mostly protected by intellectual property rights of significant qualities that can be collected and preserved by libraries and institutional repositories. So grey literatures is very much essential when you are searching for evidence. It can be a good source. So researchers conducting systematic reviews, they include grey literatures in their search to ensure a comprehensiveness examinations of the topic at hand. The inclusions of grey literatures in the systematic reviews is recommended by several international organizations in order to help minimize the publication bias. So I will come to the bias. What are the different types? I will come in different slides. So it has already been recommended by several organizations to include the grey literatures. So for example, grey literatures include like conference abstracts, presentations, proceedings, unpublished trial data, government publications, reports, dissertations, theses, patents, policies, and producers. So these are some of the examples of grey literatures, and based on that, you can use it for searching for evidences. Now, theses and dissertations. Thesis, there are many platforms of searching for a thesis, like Index to Thesis. Index to Thesis is a platform that identifies and links to a full text of a thesis available, which are online. Network Digital Library of Thesis and Dissertations, which called NDLTD, is an international organization that promotes creations, access to, and preservations of electronic theses and dissertations from academic institutes around the world. ProQuest is the world's most comprehensive organized collections of multidisciplinary dissertations and theses all over the world. Ethos is mostly you will get a doctoral level thesis. This contains informations about long essays and dissertations involving personal researches. Coming to another source like government websites. So it can also be platforms for searching your evidence with relevant to your research questions. So there are several platforms like NIH Reporter. It's an electronics tools that allows user to search a repository of NIH funded research projects and access publications and patent results from NIH fundings. NLM is a platform for health service research projects in progress. It will give information about ongoing health service research and publications health projects. AHRQ grants for online database. This search includes like portfolio, priority populations, and then indications of whether it is a recovery act projects. Health service and science research resources. It gives you information about research database, instruments, indices employed in health service research, social sciences, and public health with link to PubMed. NTIS is a US government funded science and technical and engineering reports. So these are some of that government website which can give you the evidences based on your research questions. You can use these platforms for searching your evidences. So if I then I will go to risks of bias assessment. So if somebody has any questions, you can ask me, or you can use your chats to ask, or you can raise your hands. I'll be happy to give you the answers. So is there any questions from the participants? So no questions. Okay. So now I will be talking about risks of bias assessment. What is risks of bias and why it is important to study in systematic reviews? So while conducting a systematic review, it can be susceptible to bias depending on the validity of the studies included in the review. That's which is why assessing the risks of bias is very much important using a bias tools during the process of systematic review. What do you mean by bias? Bias refers to the factor that are distort the results of the systematic review. It indicates systematic flaws or limitations in the design, conduct, or analysis of the results. So bias can be due to the systematic errors, or if there is a difference between your results, between the results and in the inferences, and which can lead to estimations or overestimations of the effect in the bias. So that's why the analyzing the risks of bias using various risks of bias tools is essential. What are the significance of assessing the risks of bias? Assessing a risk of bias is very critical as it ensures transparency of evidence, synthesis results and findings. Assessing bias is performed when each study is a system for each studies in a systematic review. There might be some differences in a risk of bias, which might be due to the variation in the results of the studies. So you can say that all results can be considered consistent among themselves, but all studies could be faulty due to the biasness. So there are different types of bias. We'll study that. We'll discuss on it. What are the different types of bias? It can be from like selection bias, performance bias, attrition bias, detection bias, or publication bias or reporting bias. So coming to one by one, like selection bias. What is this? This refers to the problems with comparatively of the participants or populations in a studies. This means the systematic differences in baseline characteristics between two groups when compared. For examples like selections of participants with different age characteristics. So this is called the selection bias. Performance bias. These types of bias occurred when factors other than the specific interventions or exposures being studied which influence the observed effect estimate of the studies. This can lead to distorted or inaccurate results. This performance bias is particularly relevant in experimental and in interventional studies such as randomized control trials, where the goal is to assess the impact of a specific treatment, interventions, or exposures. This means that there is a systematic difference in the attentions and treatment between two groups. Like for example, participants who are aware that they are not receiving any treatments may seek other forms of care. This is called a performance bias. Attrition bias, when there is a systematic difference in loss to follow up between two groups, that leads to the attrition bias. Is detection bias. This kind of bias arise when problems with the measurements or classifications of exposures or outcomes. It happens when there are differences in outcome assessment out of the knowledge of treatment allocations by unblind outcome assessors. So this means that there is a systematic difference in between two groups how outcomes are determined. So for example, if the researcher is aware of the interventions, the outcomes might be assessed with bias. Reporting bias. Sorry. This happens when there are problems with measurements or classifications of outcomes, especially when there is a missing informations. So it occurs when published trials selective reports only subsets of their measures outcomes. So this refers to the systematic differences between reported and unreported findings. For example, like online only publishing favorable outcomes, leaving readers with incomplete and skewed understanding of the results. This is also called a publication bias. How to assess the risks of bias? So we studied that there are different bias. Now we know about how we are going to assess the risks of bias. So depending on the reviewing author's judgment in the articles, searching for the clues to bias and looking for missing informations. By studying reviews, studies protocols, or contacting the authors, you can assess the risks of biasness. Also, there are several platforms, online platforms or softwares for assessing bias. For example, I am showing here. This is called a Cochrane bias assessment. It's a domain-based assessment and which has been used for analyzing bias in human medicines. So what are the different domains? It's a software-based assessments. What are the different domains? There are several domains. You can see that random sequence generations, allocations concealment, blinding of participants and personals, blinding of outcome and assessment, incomplete outcome and data, selective outcome reporting, and other source of bias. So these are the base, and based on that, this softwares will assess the risks of biasness. So I have prepared a flowchart. So you can see that circles or elliptical shapes is marked with a red. These are all different biasness, and rectangular shapes with blue lines. These are the domain. So if there is a random sequence generations or allocations concealments, it is a type of like a selections biasness. So there is a correlations between your different types of biasness and your domain of assessment, the risks of biasness. So these platforms helps you to assess the biasness based on these parameters. Also, there are many other tools for assessing the biasness or your qualities of studies. One is Robot 2.0 is a randomized control trials. One based on there you can assess your biasness. Robbins 1 is a non-randomized studies or cohorts of interventions. Robbins E, non-randomized studies or cohort of exposures other than interventions, including environmental and occupational exposures. Newcastle is a case control or cohort studies. Quadras 2, it can be used for diagnostic accuracy. Axis is used for cross-sectional and prevalence studies, and there are several other tools. These are the name of the tools. You can use it based on your studies, based on your research fields. You can use these platforms or softwares for assessing the biasness or quality of the studies. Now coming to the level of certainty. So if there is a bias, there will be some levels of uncertainties or certainties. The level of certainties depends upon the level of confidence and the judgments. So there are 4 different levels like high, moderate, low, and very low. So if we have a very confident in the evidence supporting the recommendations, it can be recommended as high level of certainties, which leads to further research in very unlikely to change the estimate of the effect. When we have a moderate confidence in the evidence support, this leads to the moderate certainty, and it can be related to the future research could have an important impact which may change the estimate of effect. Likewise, we have low and very low. Very low indicates an estimate of effect is very uncertain. So based on that uncertainties or confidence, you can studies that level of certainties. Uh, so what are the key points when we are assessing the risks of bias? So biasness can lead to overestimate or underestimations of results. It can be assessed for several domains. Yeah, as I have discussed earlier, your judgment should be used for assessing risks of bias, like searching for clues, reviews, authors' decisions. But you should be cautious when you are applied in the judgments. So these are the key points when you are assessing the bias, risks of biasness, you should keep in your mind, as this process is very, very, very long. Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Then I will move to data extractions. Data extractions, this is also very important and key parameters. So data extractions in a systematic reviews are the results from individual studies specifically related to the reviewer questions. It should be considered, it should be conducted by two blinded independent reviews to reduce biasness and ensure the data quality. So there are many difficulties. Researchers found many difficulties during the extraction of data. The difficulties, some of the difficulties, they are due to the different populations used, different outcome measurements, different scale of measures used, interventions administrative differently, or reliability of data extractions, that is between two reviewers. So these are some of the difficulties researchers generally face during extractions of the data. Researchers often use different platforms or forms or tables to extract data, and they will then summarize or analyze. So when researchers extract these data, so what considerations they keep in mind while extracting the data? Here is some list of considerations, like the source. Like what are the sources? It can be citations or contact details, eligibility, eligibility for like reviews or the outcomes, what methods they have studied, like study designs or concerned about the biasness, participants, like total numbers, settings, diagnostic criteria, interventions, the total number of interventions groups, outcomes, results for each outcomes of interest, like sample sizes, their distributions, populations, miscellaneous like funding sources. So um, uh, these are some of the list of the considerations um, while extracting the data. Reviewers might reviewers can use it, and based on that they will formulate a tables or forms, and uh, they can extract the data according to their according to that forms. So the amount and type of the data research collect, as well as number of collaborators who will be extracting it, will dictate which extraction tools are the best for the project. So there are several extraction tools. Many researchers use Excels. So Excel is a basic tools, or you can say basic platforms, which can be used for measurements of screening and data extractions for a systematic review process. There must be can be a customized workbook or spreadsheets which can be designed by the reviewers for extracting the data. Or you can use a more advanced approach to using Excels for purpose in the PCS approach. So Excels is a mostly used and a basic platforms or basic tools that most of these researchers are using for extraction of data. There are several softwares like Riven is a free software which has been used by Concurrent for extracting data, mostly are used in healthcare sectors. Systematic reviews, reviewing data repository is a website-based tools for extraction and management of data for systematic reviews or meta-analysis. It is also an open and searchable archives of systematic reviews and their data. So this is also a web-based tools for extracting data and systematic review toolboxes. It is a commonly community-driven, searchable, and web-based catalogs of tools that supports the systematic review process across multiple domains. So these are some of the software-based and web-based tools that can be used for extracting data. So finally, that what we have learned so far. So if you're planning to perform a systematic reviews or meta-analysis, you will need to establish a well-ordered approach to extracting data. So based on your research questions and keywords, you need to first establish a forms or a tables which what will be the points, what you want to extract, what data you require. So it should be a well established and well ordered. So second one is research. As I said, use a forms or tables to capture the data, and after that they will summarize or analyze. The amount and type of the data researchers collects, as well as the number of collaborators researchers will be extracting it, will be determined with extraction tools which are based for your research project. So you can select according to your projects which platforms is good or suitable for your research purpose for extracting your data. There are different sectors of researchers. So based on that, researchers can select their own platforms. So there are, like I say, I have discussed on, there are various tools of data extractions, but among them, Excel and Google Spreadsheet are the best options. If you have a smaller or more straightforward projects, you can use it. If you have a very more complicated data and it's a very long, you can use that systematic review software platforms. You can use that platform for your data extractions. So these are some of the important points which I like to highlight. And I followed some of these references like concurrent handbooks for systematic reviews, some of that published literatures for making the presentations for our participants. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or you can use your chat books, your chats for asking questions. Okay, thank you everyone. Yeah, I have.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor. I think we should now open the floor to questions. If there are any questions to our
Yes.
participants, please unmute your mic and ask a question or use the chat box to ask questions. Do we have any question on the chat or someone want to speak up?
There is no such still. So probably they have at least learned, or
Yeah. Okay, the recording and together with the presentation slide will be shared to everyone who registered for this session. I think latest tomorrow or Friday, the latest of recording and the presentation slide will be shared via email to everyone who registered and attended the session. Okay, if you don't have any other question, I don't know, Doctor, if you have something else to say, or we should just close the session now.
So if you don't have any questions, then we can close it.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much to all our participants for making this session a possible one. Without you, this session was not going to happen. Thank you also to our facilitator, Dr. Sanki Piswas. Thank you so much on behalf of Postgraduate School and the Research Capacity Development. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thanks.